Hi everyone, it's that time again when you might be starting to think about your year end. The year end process itself is straightforward. It's a simple wizard that includes a few options. However, before this, there's the preparation stage, ensuring you've posted everything, and of course, it involves running reports. But do you understand your reports and also the opportunities that you have to develop them? Ensuring they're accurate, but also that they provide you with a correct level of detail. Throughout January and February, we're running a series of live webinars to help develop your knowledge and understanding of the management reports available in Sage 50 accounts. We'll be starting with the basics, understanding nominal records and the structure of the nominal ledger. This is also ideal if you need to create new nominal codes. Following on from this, we'll examine the chart of accounts looking at all aspects, including adding new layouts and editing existing ones. Our attention then turns to the management reports themselves, the trial balance, the profit and loss, and of course the balance sheet. We'll explain how to run them, what they show, and most importantly, how the figures calculate. We want you to be confident. On the management report session, one of the most common scenarios we're asked about is where you haven't yet run your year end, but need to generate a profit and loss report for your next financial year. We've got your back with this and have a specific webinar that explores the options you have available, whether it's running reports for your new financial year or even a previous one. The last webinar in the series looks at reconciling your age debtors and age creditor reports at year end, ensuring that the balances agree with the figures on your trial balance and the balance sheet. Of course, this could be done at any time, such as part of your month-end process. So come along and we'll demonstrate what to check and how to run them to ensure everything agrees. If you'd like to attend any or all of these sessions to help develop your knowledge and boost your confidence, then simply head along to sage.co.uk/webinars and register for your free place. These, along with loads of other topics, including how to run your year end, are available. See you soon.
Hi everybody! You might be approaching the end of your financial year and it's the perfect time to get your Sage 50 accounts in order. The year-end process itself is simple. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned pro or if it's your first time, it's just a few steps in the wizard. But before you dive in, there are some important checks and housekeeping tasks that will just make everything run smoothly. Things like archiving your company data just keeps it organised and improves performance. We'll show you how to create an archive and why it's a good habit. Then there's backing up your data, which is essential before making any changes, and we'll share best practice just to ensure your backups are reliable. And avoid accidental postings into a closed period by setting a lock date. It's quick to do and it saves headaches later. We'll also guide you through the year-end wizard as well, step by step, so you can complete the process with confidence. If you need to tidy up older unused records, we'll show you how to do that as well in our Delete Your Records webinar. And then we'll also cover how to clear the audit trail. It can help speed things up and we'll explain when it's appropriate and how to do that safely. So to help you to prepare, we're hosting a series of live webinars throughout January and February. These sessions will give you practical tips and demonstrations so you feel confident about your year end and keep your accounts in great shape. Don't miss this opportunity to start the new year with clean, organised data and peace of mind. Make sure you reserve your spot today at sage.co.uk/webinars, and we look forward to seeing you there. Hello everybody. Hope everybody's well today and the weather's nicer than it is here in Newcastle today. It's absolutely chucking it down outside today. Today we're going to be looking at the company archive and why you should take one and what it's used for, and also how it's different from your usual daily backup as well. I'm Laura, and I'm going to be hosting the webinar today. We've also got Michael in the background as well, just waiting for any questions that you may have around the topic. So if you've got any unrelated questions, we'll try and answer those too, but we're going to prioritise the questions around the company archive first. But do pop them across. As always, anything we can't get answered on the webinar today, we'll send you an email after it's finished. So before we get started, just the housekeeping rules there. So your mic will be muted automatically, but you will see there is a little question icon on the toolbar where you can submit any questions that you may have for Michael. So just make sure you pop them in there, keep them busy. And I will be including the slides in the handout section there, as there are some links at the end which you might find useful. So if you do want to download those, make sure you do that during the session. And there's also that printer-friendly version as well, if you'd like to make notes there too. So today we're going to be covering the company archive and when and why you should take one and why it's different to a backup as well. So we've got some demonstrations around taking the archive, how you access the archive, and also user settings who might not be able to see the archive options as well. And then we'll also have a look at the differences between the backup and the archive, because I think there is a bit of a misconception as to what the archive actually does there. So before we dive in, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run a poll. And what I want to do is just see what your understanding is of the actual archive itself there. So I'm just going to launch that on your screen there now. So I just want to know what your understanding of the company archive is. So does it remove all old data? Or does it take just a read-only copy of your data? Or does it back your data up? So I'll just give you a couple of moments there just to fill that in. Don't worry if you're not too sure on there, just pop an answer in. We'll just see what you think it is. See those answers coming in there now. So I'll just give you a few more moments. And see the sort of mainly between removing old data and taking a read-only copy of the data there. Right, so I'll stop that now. I'll share those results there. So we've got 38% think that it removes all data, and we've got 62% think it takes a read-only copy of your data, and we've got nobody thinks that it just takes that backup of your data there. So if you said it takes a read-only copy of your data, you'd be correct. And you might be thinking, well, I've got a backup. Why bother taking an archive? And I'm going to cover that in the demonstration there as well. But just to confirm, taking an archive of the company, it doesn't remove old data. So that's something separate on there. But we'll go into that in a bit more detail. So what is an archive? So like we've just looked at there, the archive, it's a read-only copy of your data as it appears in the program at the time that you've taken it. So from when the company was first started, right up until that point that you're taking that archive. So it includes things like your existing logons. So this means in a year's time, if you wanted to access that archive, you're going to need to log on to the archive using the credentials that you had at the time of taking that archive. But don't worry if you can't remember these and you think, well, I've got an archive from a few years ago. I've no idea what that login is. Don't worry about that. If you can't remember it, give our tech support a call because we do have something in place where we can get that for you. So it's read-only, meaning that you can't add any new information or edit or delete transactions, but you can remove certain information for GDPR purposes there. And just please note that anything in the archive, so if you make any changes in the archive, it doesn't update the live data and vice versa. When you take an archive, it's saved within your data path, so your company data path there, so it just makes it easy to access from your Sage 50 accounts. And to access your archive, you don't need to restore anything like you would do with a backup. Instead, you get instant access to revisiting historical data, figures, and running reports. It's a bit like opening another company. Just be aware that attachments are not included in an archive. You need to have access rights to create the archive as well. So the manager logon details, they have that by default, but any other users would need to have access rights. Again, we'll have a look at that in the demo as well there. And there is sometimes the misconception that archiving the company will remove data, but this is not the case. So it doesn't delete anything. It only takes that screenshot of your company data at that time. Archives themselves, they don't sync over remote data access. So if you are connected using remote data access to another user and you take an archive, they can't see it. However, there is a way around that. If they do want to access that, you can take an archive only backup and they can restore that, meaning that they can view that. And I'll show you how to do that in the demonstration too there as well. The main reason that it doesn't sync over remote data access is because it's basically a copy of your data. So if you think about it, when the data is syncing up over remote data access, you would have two lots of company data, which might take a bit longer on there. So that's the main reason that it doesn't sync over remote data access. And then lastly, you just need to have access to Sage 50 account software to be able to access your archive there. So when might you take an archive? So you can take an archive at any point in time. There's no limit on how many times you can take one, but we strongly recommend to take one prior to running the year end and processes that, that things like taking or running the clear audit trail, anything that's going to have a significant impact on your data there. So you might run a clear audit trail straight after running the year end. And if you've already taken the archive just before the year end, you wouldn't need to take another one there. But say you got halfway through the year and you thought, right, I'm going to run the clear audit trail, which is basically where you remove old transactions. Say you do that mid-year, you could then take an archive prior to that and a backup. But I've attached links to both the guides here too. So if you do want more information around completing your year end and things like clearing the audit trail, we've also got webinars which cover these topics coming up in the first week of February as well. So just next week. So you can sign up for those on the link on the slides there as well. And you'll also get a follow-up email like you would normally do in about an hour's time. The link's on there to be able to sign up to those too. So that's enough of the slides at the moment. I'll pop into my program and we can have a look at the archive option. So I'll just bring that up there. So as we've had a look at, you might take an archive at year end or before you clear the audit trail, which is where you remove transactions, or if you make any significant data changes like removing old records like suppliers or bank accounts, customers, things like that. You can find the archive option in two places. So the first one is in tools at the top here, and then down to period end, and we've got the option in here, archive company. So if I just click on that, drag that across because it's opened it on my other screen. So you can amend the description. So I've just left mine at mid-year 2025 on there, so I'm not running this before my year end. If you were running things like the clear audit trail, you can type in there, you might want to just say before clear audit trail, so you can amend that just so you know when that archive's been taken. And you can also amend the archive folder name as well there. You can't change the path to where the archive's saved there, just because it's stored where the company data is stored on there. But the purpose of the archive is to take that snapshot of the data from the very start of the company up until the date that it's taken. So if I took my archive now, it's going to take that as of today's date, so the 27th of January, as of 9 minutes past 11. So anything I enter into my live company after this wouldn't be then included in my archive. So if I just say OK to that, and that'll just tell me that it's archiving it. And obviously it's done it very quickly there. You can see that was a very quick process. I've got quite a small data set, but also it's local on my PC. So I'm not over a network or anything like that. So it might take a bit longer when you run the archive there. If you clear your audit trail, so if you're clearing out things like old records or old transactions, you can always refer back to these in the archive, along with, say, if you were being audited and you had, you needed to get back to the old data there, you can get back to it. You might think, well, I could just use a backup for that. And you could use a backup for that, that's no problem. But the difference with a backup is that you would need to wait while that restores back into the program. And if there's more than just yourself logged in, everybody else would need to log out while you're restoring that data, because it's going to restore it for everybody. Plus, if you're over a network, so if your data's on a server, that can also take a lot more time to get back into it as well. There is the option, obviously, if you have a multi-company license, to restore a backup into a new company, or just depending on the version that you're on, you could also restore it into the practice data again, but you're still going to need to sit while that restores. Whereas opening a company archive, if we just go to File at the top, and I'm just going to go to Open, and then I'm going to select Company Archive, drag it across, you can see we've got my archives in here, nice and easy just to open them. So say if I thought, right, I need to see my archive before I cleared my audit trail a few weeks ago on there, I can just click on that one, highlight it, click on Open, and it'll open that company for me. So it just opens that company archive. So that is a screenshot as of the 12th of January. This is when I took the archive. You would be logging on with the details that were applicable at that time. I haven't changed mine, so it's still just manager with my password on there. And you can see I'm not sitting waiting for it to restore, that's me straight in. So I'm into my company archive. So you can see how quick that is. You can also see along the top that it tells you the archive name as well. So we know that we're not in the live data there. We can see that we've got the archive and it's the mid-year after the clear audit trail, and then I've got my company name. So we know that we're not in the live data anymore. As I say, don't worry if you can't remember what your login details were, if it was a few years ago. We do have something in place. If you give our technical support a ring, we can get that for you as well. But other than that, what we'll have a look at, I'm just going to show you, as I mentioned before, you're limited to the changes that can be made, which are only for GDPR purposes. So you can't post anything new. So it's worth noting, anything you change in the archive won't change in the live data and vice versa. So if we just go and have a look in bank accounts, for example, and if I just go and say, right, I'm just going to post a bank payment, you can't. Straight away, it tells you that you're in a company archive, read-only mode, and it tells us the options not available when working in an archive data set or when it's read-only mode. So it won't let you get any further than that. So you can't actually go and post any transactions in there. You can run management reports from here as well for prior years. So say you've run your year end, obviously I'm in a mid-year one at the moment, but if you've run a year end from a few years ago and you think, oh, I need my profit and loss or your balance sheet or management reports from a previous financial year, you can come and run them in here as well. So it won't include those journals where everything's been cleared down when you've run that year end. So if I go into my nominal codes and say I'm going to run my profit and loss, so just click on profit and loss at the top, just drag this over, we'll just go to preview it, and I'll just run that. I'm going to leave the criteria just as it is on there, I'm not going to change any of that. And I'll just make this bigger just so you can see. So it tells us that it's ran from an archive. So it tells you the company name that it's ran from. So you know that it's been ran from an archive if you do need to run any of those transactional or the management reports on there. That's quite a handy one to know on there if you do need to run any management reports there. What we'll have a look at as well, if I go into customers on here, and I'm just going to change, say, I'll have a look at this one here. I'm just going to click on edit. We'll just look at changing a name of a customer just so I can show you. I'll just take out the surname. We'll just leave it as Fred. I'm going to save that and close. And we can see now it's just called Fred. So in our archive, I've amended that. If I now go back to my live data, which is really easy to go back into again, you're not restoring anything. We're just going to go to File at the top, Open, and Open Company Data. And it just gets that message just saying it's going to close all windows. You'll lose any unsaved data. So that's fine. I haven't got any windows open. And what it'll do is it'll just bring that up so I can log back in. I'm just going to log back in as manager again. And then we'll go back to customers as well, just so I can show you. So we see here, the one that I just took out right on the end there, it hasn't changed it in my live data. So it's only changed it in my archive. And that's the same with anything I post in my live program now. It's not going to affect those archives because the archives are a snapshot as of that time on there. So As I mentioned, the archive, it doesn't sync over remote data access. So if you're connected to somebody via remote data access and the archives are on a colleague's PC, for example, there is another way that you can view them on your PC. So you can get a backup of just the archives from whoever's taken them and then just restore them into your Sage 50 accounts. So to do that on their PC, they would be just taking that backup. So they're going to go to File at the top and they're going to go to Backup. And again, just that window, close all the windows on there, drag this over. So you've got different options that you can back up on here. Now, when you take a backup, you normally always include your data files. But if you're just taking one for, say, your company archives, you can untick the data files and just take a company archives backup on there. It's the same with anything as well. You can do that with your layout templates, reports, transaction attachments. If you're just wanting to get a copy of those, but not the data, you can just unclick the data. But normally when you're taking your data, your standard backup, you'd always be including those data files. But for this purpose, we're just going to take the company archives and we just want that on its own there. And we could even pop in here, company archives. And then we can take that backup. So I'm just going to say OK to that, just so it takes that backup. You'll get the warning message just to say that you've not included any data files as part of your backup, because obviously if you were taking a standard backup, you'd want to include those, but we know that we don't want those this time round. So I'm just going to say yes to that, and it'll have a bit of a whiz through on there. Now, depending on how many archives that you're taking a backup of and how much data you've got, it might take a little bit longer. This will be fairly quick because I think you saw there was about 5 archives in there, and my data is not very big at all on there. We'll take that backup. Once the backup's taken, they would just either save that in a shared location that you can access or get that over to you on a USB stick maybe on there, and then you can restore it into your program. So when you're restoring it, all we're going to do is go to File at the top, click on Restore, drag that over, and then we're just going to browse to where we've taken that backup on there. So I put mine in the 33 folder, just click modify that on there and have a look, see if we can find it in here. So I took one earlier on when I was having a bit of practice. So that's the one that I would want. So that's the file I've just taken. We know because it's the company archives. I've named it in there. So if I click open to that, it'll tell us in this window that it's just a backup of the company archives. Now, anything else that you'd be restoring in there, you might have data files in there. If you're restoring just all of the data files in there, if it was just reports or layouts, it'll tell you what you're restoring in there. So it's only going to restore the archive folder. So you're not overwriting anything. You're just adding that archive file in alongside everything else that you've got for that company. There's no harm in doing a backup, just a general backup beforehand if that makes you feel more comfortable though. I always like to do that. You can never have too many backups there. It'll tell you the version that it's on as well. So the version is on version 33. Now, if this was an old archive and it was on version, say, 29, the program will convert that for you. So it'll just run that through and it'll convert it onto the most up-to-date version. And then all you'll do is just click OK, and it'll just restore that in there. You'll get the message just opened on the other screen. You're about to restore the data. The procedure will overwrite any data held in your current company. We know that it's only the archives, so it's not going to overwrite any data or anything like that. And then you can just say yes to that, and then it'll just whiz through on there. Obviously, again, it might take a bit longer on yours if you've got more data than I have there. But that's for that on there. So you can see it's quite straightforward accessing the archive and where you can actually go in and you can open the archive. So you're not having to restore in backups or anything like that on there. So the second place that you can view that, and I'll show you that in a moment because it's just restoring that in on there, is within the year-end option on there as well. So that's restored in. I'll just say OK to that. And just log back in. But you can see now the benefit of just having that archive to pop into. If you just need to nip into it, it's a lot easier than having to go and restore a backup and then think, oh, hang on, that's the wrong backup. Find another backup and then restore that in. You can nip in and out of these so easily. But the other place you can find it is in Tools, Period End. And then if we go to the Year End option, so as part of your year end, we've got the archive your data on there. Okay, so it's always ticked when you go to run your year end. You can untick this, but then you won't have that archive to refer back to if you need it. And it can be handy, like I say, for running things like your management reports as well. We'd always recommend taking that archive, because it's better to have it and not need it than actually need that archive and not have it, if that makes sense. So again, if I click on archive location, it's just the same window as before. It's obviously in the description, we've got year end 2025. It's going to archive it in the 2025 folder. You can change those, or you can add additional information there if you want to. The path to the archive, like I say, that always stays the same because it's in that company folder and then in the archives folder there. I'll not run that again though, because you saw that run just before there. I'll just close out of that. Now, I mentioned user access in an archive. So the manager logon always has this by default. So you can see in tools, period end, you've got that archive company option. And you can always go to file, open, and you can open a company archive from in there. So if I log on as somebody else, so if I just go to file and log off, and I'll just show you what I mean with the difference on there for not being able to see it. I'm just going to log on as myself. And we can see down here in the bottom, now it says user Laura. If now I go to tools at the top and period end, you'll see I don't have the archive option. It's no longer showing in here. If I go to year end, it still has the option within the year end, because you might think, well, why is it not in there? But it's because we would never want you to run the year end without taking that archive on there. So we don't take it out of this option here. But then you might not have somebody who's got restricted access actually running the year end on there, but it'll still run as part of the year end process. But you don't have the option just to go in and take when I can think of the words, a company archive whenever you want to. And also, you can't go and open. So if I go to file and open, there's no open company archive. You can't view that either. And I'll show you that where that is just in the settings as well. So if I log off as Laura, and then we'll log back on as manager, we'll just have a look at it in here, just in the settings there. There, so we can see now I'm logged back in as manager down at the bottom. If I go to settings, and I'm going to go down to user management, and I'm going to have a look at users. And I'll open up a list of my users. So we've just got the 2 on here. We can see Laura's got partial use. So if I highlight Laura, I'm just going to click edit. And then we're going to have a look at the level of access. So remember, the first place that we were looking at was under tools in period end. So if we go down to the tools menu, which is just here, there's a little drop down. If I expand that, scroll down, and we know it was in tools and then period end, and that's not ticked. So if I tick archive company, so it gives me the option now, I'll be able to archive that company, and I'll just put that back up. The other option was under file. So if we go on the file menu, and then we can see there, the one that I don't have ticked is open company archive. So if I just tick that, and I'm just going to click finish, and I'm just going to save that. Still says partial because I might not have access to something else in there. And then if I close that, if I log back in as Laura now, and then we'll just go to the same, just while it just configures that on there. Click on tools at the top, period end, and I've got that archive company option in there. So you can see it's nice and easy just to be able to go in and amend the user on there. Also in file, open, I've got open company archive, so I can open the company archives now, logged in as Laura if I need to. So you can see it's nice and straightforward there. So much easier than having to look for and restore backups in there. You can just pop into that company archive. So I'll just pop back to my slides. So just a summary on there. So the archive, it takes that read-only copy of your data and it stores it within your data path there. You can open it like a separate company and it doesn't remove transactions from your data. And you also don't specify a date to run the archive as well. So you're just taking that archive as of that time that you're running it. For a backup, again, that takes a copy of your data, which can be saved anywhere you wish. And that's designed to be restored into the program over the top of your live data or as a separate company if your license allows you to do so. Once you've restored that in, you can edit, you can delete and add new information. And if you're going to restore over the top of live data, just remember to do that with caution and always just take a backup before you restore anything over your live data there. And your clear audit trail. So I think this is where people sometimes get it a bit mixed up with the archive on there. But the clear audit trail, that the purpose of that is just to remove older transactions to reduce the size of your data and keep things tidier and more organized. So for that, you're going to be entering a date to clear it up to. For example, if you wanted to keep 6 years worth of data, you would enter a chosen date, and anything before that would be removed, just given that it fits the criteria there. But Michael is running a webinar on the Clear Audit Trail next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. So if you do want to get a bit more information on that, make sure you get signed up to that one there. The link's going to be on the follow-up email and it's on the slides as well. I've added links here too to just the guides on archiving your company data, which goes through the process step by step there. And for anything else you might be looking for, I've also included the link to our help centre where you can access our live webinars, both live and recordings as well. And we've also got guides and things like Sage University, which you can also access from there too. So I'll keep this going for a little bit longer. It doesn't look like we've had any questions come through so far, so I must be doing something right with the webinar on there. If you do have anything, just make sure you pop it in there. As Michael is just waiting for you to pop some questions in. And you can also access our webinars page as well at sage.co.uk/webinars. So all the past recordings are free to view in here, along with signing up for the new ones. They're all free as well there for you, but the link's just on the slide there. We do also have our community hub as well, which if you haven't seen this before, it's an online forum for Sage 50 accounts users. So it's just to share things like knowledge, swap ideas, and solve problems together, basically. It's completely free to join. You can ask questions where other users, along with Sage experts, can help and advise you as well, or you might have the answers to some questions that other people have asked as well. But you can keep updated with what's happening, and it's open 24/7 as well. So there is a link which takes you straight to the hub just on the slide there too. And then I've also included an additional survey, which I hope you don't mind just taking a quick look at. Basically, it's just to help us shape our learning around what matters most to you. So there's a QR code which you can scan on there, but there is also a link on the slide there too for when you've downloaded those slides. But it's just so we can sort of get a bit more, understanding of what you'd like to see there. But other than that, that does bring us to the end of today's session. So it doesn't look like we've had any questions there. So I hope you found that useful and you can see the benefit around taking that archive and how it's different from a regular backup as well, because you can see it's so easy just to pop into. But as always, you'll get that survey when leaving today's session. So I'd love it if you could leave us any feedback or any comments around what else you'd like to see in a webinar, or if there's anything you'd like to see done differently maybe. But for now, thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.